What up, reader fam? Today I'm bringing you a Negative Nancy video. Negative Nancy. Negative Nancy. It's been a while since I've done a negative video and I thought it was about time. Put some shades on and sip some tea. No, but honestly, this video is not going to be as negative as you might think it's going to be. Just because I titled this video Worst Book Sequels doesn't mean I'm going to be tearing these books to pieces, because that's not how I do it on my channel. You can critique books without having to rip them to shreds. I was inspired to do this video because I saw my friend Murphy had posted a similar video, so I will leave a link to her video down below, as I got the idea to do this video because of her. So go check out her video and show her some support. But today I'm going to be talking about some of my least favorite sequels, which every book on this list I enjoyed, but I just had some issues with them. You can enjoy a book and still recognize that it's not perfect. If I mention one of your all-time favorite books in this video, know that it's not a personal attack on you. Just because I don't love a certain book doesn't mean that you can't love that book. If you don't like my favorite book, that's a-okay with me. We encourage differing opinions here. And by all means, if you have a different opinion than me, let me know that different opinion down below in the comments. I want to hear from you. But without further ado, let's get started. The first book on my list comes from the Rebel Belle trilogy, and that is Miss Mayhem, the second book. This trilogy follows this Southern belle who one day becomes a paladin, which if you don't know what a paladin is, it's this powerful protector, this guardian of sorts. This book just gave me the feeling that this trilogy should have been a duology. The first part of this book could have easily been the last chunk of the first book, and the last chunk of this book could have easily been the first chunk of the last book. It really just felt like a filler book to me. It didn't really move the plot forward at all. In some ways, it almost felt like this book started out as just a short story set in this world, and then they were like, let's just expand on it and make it the second book of this trilogy. Can you please stop saying trilogy? And to be quite honest, this book actually ended up putting me off from finishing this trilogy. I still have yet to finish this trilogy because of this book. This book just put this like nasty taste in my mouth towards this trilogy. You're not gonna stop saying it, are you? For some reason. First book was excellent, second book was weak. What's the third book gonna be like? I've yet to find out because this book kind of put me in a slump for this trilogy. God. Even though I'm being kind of harsh on this book, I still have this weird soft spot for this story. The characters are incredibly lovable and just so much fun to read about. But at the same time, I feel like the plot started up here on a high note and now it's just going... If you've read the third book and you think it's better than the second book, let me know in the comments down below. I need a little push, a little nudge to keep going with this trilogy. He said it again, I'm about to smack him upside the head with a book! I mean, what's one more book? I just need to finish it off. Get it together, boy! Next up, I have the fifth book in the Throne of Glass series, Empire of Storms. If you don't know anything about the Throne of Glass series, it's a popular series about an assassin. LOL. At least that's how the series started out. I honestly can't say one of the big reasons why I wasn't the biggest fan of this sequel, but if you know my channel well enough and you know my trash tendencies for a certain character, then you'll know why I was disappointed with this book. Mind you, going into this book, I had no idea that Tower of Dawn was happening. So had I known that that was happening, I might have been okay with this while I was reading it. But I pretty much rage read this book. Apparently that's what I think rage reading looks like. There were other reasons as to why I didn't love this one as much as the other books though. This book dragged quite a bit and I honestly feel like it had a hard time kind of finding its footing. But at the same time, I do understand why this book is important. It definitely does lead you into the finale. It's a bridge to the finale. Taking a walk to Kingdom of Ash. This was also the book where I just started feeling a major disconnect with our main character, which felt so weird to me. It felt so weird to read her parts and not really feel anything for her, especially when I used to love her so much. I wanted to care, but something in me had just lost interest with her. To be fair, girl has a lot on her plate, and she can't always please the reader. I've got hope though that I will enjoy her character more in Kingdom of Ash. That's what I'm hoping for at least. We'll see. Next up I have here Scarlet from the Lunar Chronicles series. This series is made up of fairy tale retellings. One of my big critiques for this book just comes from a personal preference. This book is romance heavy, and I personally just don't enjoy romance in books. It usually just leads me into a cringe fest. The thing is, with this romance, it was so fast, it happened overnight. Scarlet was just like, vroom vroom, let's get this show on the road. I think another critique that I have for this series in general is that every character seems to have a relationship. Like, nobody can just be friends, nobody can just be single, everybody must have a lover. You go into each book with a new character, and every time it's crystal clear who they're going to end up with. There's hardly ever really a surprise element with the romance. I will say though that the romance wasn't the only issue that I had with this book. I also just just wasn't the biggest fan of Scarlet. She definitely did grow on me later on in the series, and I grew to appreciate her character. But I remember reading this book, and when I would have her sections, I would just be like, yeah, so when are we gonna have another Cinder section? I never really gravitated towards Scarlet sections. Next up, I have the Ship of the Dead, which is the third and final book in the Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard trilogy. This story follows a boy named Magnus Chase who one day finds out that his dad is a Norse god. No big deal. While I really enjoyed this book, to me, this didn't really live up to the first two books. I left the first two books feeling an overflowing amount of love for the story, the characters, the world, the writing, just everything about them I was obsessed with. Like, I had reached that ride or die level with the first two books. I really saw growth in Rick's writing, and all the characters had just won me over. So going into this book, I probably had unrealistic expectations. I honestly feel like I had hit the jackpot, and I still think this trilogy is worth it. I just think that this book is a little bit on the underwhelming side. The plot was a bit on the sporadic side. I feel like it kept bringing in these random elements that didn't really add much to the story. But most of all, the thing that bothered me the most is that we have this big build-up, but it's just this build-up to nothing. The ending is pretty anticlimactic. Again, this could be my fault for going in with unrealistic expectations, because your boy went into this book hyped. Next up, I have here Ruin and Rising, which is the third book in the Grisha trilogy. This story follows this girl named Alina who unlocks a power inside of her one day when she is saving her friend. Casual! And this story takes place in the Grisha universe. Aren't you guys just loving these descriptions today? So descriptive, so revealing. Now, this is definitely a really popular opinion. I know lots of people who were really disappointed with this finale, and I'm a part of that popular opinion. It just makes me real sad because I saw the potential for this to be epic, and it just kind of fell flat for me a little bit. The thing is, it still has that amazing writing style, like Lee Bardugo. Can I drink some of that writing juice you're drinking? The thing that this book lacked the most of was just a plot. I love the plots of book 1 and book 2, but that love didn't carry over into book 3. I think the most uproar that this book gets is in regards to the end game, which I'm not going to spoil who ends up with who, obviously, but I'm right along with the squad who is not for this end game. Next up is Ignite Me, which is the third book in the Shatter Me series. This is a dystopian book that follows this girl named Juliet who has a lethal touch. This is one where I feel like if I were to give it a reread, I would like it a lot more now, because it's not that I hated it, it's just that I didn't feel like it was the end of the story, and at the time, this was just a trilogy. This was supposed to be the end of this story. But since the release of this book, it's now been expanded into a 6-book series. So at the time, I went into this book thinking that it was going to be the end of this story, and when I got to the end of it, I was like, but this is just the beginning of the story. I was underwhelmed because I felt like it was just the beginning of the end. And I wanted more, and now thankfully, Tahereh Mafi decided to expand on this series, and we're getting more books. But when I read this, I was like, yeah, so that's not the end. So maybe if I were to reread this book, knowing that the series continues on, I would like it a lot more. Next up here, I have the fourth book in the Mortal Instruments series, and that is City of Fallen Angels. This series follows this group of people called Shadow Hunters, and they are basically demon hunters. They take down demons. There's obviously so much more to the story, but that's all you need to know for this video. As a whole, the Mortal Instruments series just isn't my favorite. Even though it's the OG and it's what kind of introduced us to the Shadowhunter world, I much prefer her other stories set in this world. With that being said though, City of Fallen Angels is definitely my least favorite in this series. You're actually supposed to think of this series as two different trilogies just combined. Like books 1 through 3 are supposed to be a trilogy, and then books 4 through 6 are supposed to be their own trilogy. But it's really hard to think of it that way when it's marketed as a series. So to me, this book is just really mediocre compared to the book that comes before it. Like City of Glass was an epic book, and then this book came out and it was like, okay, how are you gonna live up to City of Glass? You're not gonna be able to. In fact, you didn't. You didn't live up to City of Glass. Mind you, I'd hate to be the book coming after City of Glass because you've got a lot to live up to. And that's what happened here. This is obviously kind of setting up a new story arc, but it's really hard to keep that in mind when you're reading this series. Next up here, I have Allegiant, which is the third book in the Divergent trilogy. This is a dystopian trilogy about a girl who tries to take down the system. That was the worst description I've given today. I'm sorry, question mark? Surprisingly, this is a book that when I first read it, I loved it. I also wasn't a very critical reader when I read this book. The times have changed. In fact, I personally didn't really understand the uproar when this book came out. I guess I just kind of overlooked all the issues with this book and just focused on the one thing that the author did that I really liked. I personally liked the fact that the author really took a chance with this book and did something that I hadn't seen done in YA before. This was one of the first books that I read where I felt like the author really understood the fact that her characters were in a really tough situation and they had to deal with that. But there are issues with this book that I didn't really see when I first read this book. It took me listening to other reviews and being open-minded to different different opinions to kind of understand that, yeah, this book is definitely not the best in the trilogy. I think looking back on this trilogy, I think something that could have been worked on is just the world building itself. It needed some help, and it might have been the thing to rescue this trilogy had it been adjusted a little bit. The next book is one that I actually don't own anymore, and that is The Death Cure, which is the third book in the Maze Runner trilogy. This is a dystopian trilogy about these boys who are in a maze and are trying to get out of the maze, and other things happen too. But that's basically it. They're trying to get out of the maze. For this trilogy, I just feel like it went in a really strange direction. With each book, I was just like, plot, where the heck you going? Characters, what the heck are you doing? World, what is even happening here? I feel like I left The Death Cure just feeling really unsatisfied with everything too. Like, I just feel like a lot of my questions weren't even answered. And that can always be really frustrating when you get to the end of a trilogy or a series or a duology, and you still have questions leaving the last book. It's like, you didn't answer all my questions. Can I get a refund? And last on my list is the sequel to If I Stay, which is Where She Went. I honestly shouldn't have even read this book because I was skeptical going into it, which is never a good thing. If you're going into a book skeptical, you're probably not going to enjoy it. But I went into this book knowing that I didn't need this book. Like, If I Stay did not need a sequel. I'm sure for massive fans of If I Stay, this book was really enjoyable. And if that was the case for you, I'm so happy for you. That's always awesome when that happens. But for my personal experience, I feel like this didn't add anything to If I Stay. In fact, this book made me really dislike the male lead of the story. It was also high-key too dramatic for me, and I love drama in books. I love reading about drama, but this drama just didn't do it for me. So those were 10 book sequels that, while I enjoyed them, I kind of had some iffy feelings about them. They're by no means the worst sequels out there, but they're also not my favorites. You guys should let me know down below in the comments a book sequel that you were disappointed by. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. I post videos frequently on this channel, so if you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe, or go and click the little bell icon and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye, choo. Next up, I have The Ship of the Dead, the third book in the I almost just said the Miss Peregrine's trilogy. Next up here, I have Allegiant, which is the third book in the... Next up here, I have...